Well, it's been a busy week at Garage Mahal, working on the various projects around here. Of course, I have been mostly buried in building this handcar set-out shed for the handcar. Just had a lot of fun designing the thing and building it. And the basic plastic construction is now finished, and I'll be moving on to paint. The whole project is currently held together with blue painter's tape, because I want to be able to separate all the walls and roof parts to facilitate painting it. So that's why everything's all held together with tape. So over to the paint booth. I'm going to be priming using Tamia's rattle can primer. It's a really good primer. Normally, if you follow the channel, I've been using this VMS primer. But for just straight up styrene plastic like this, I really like using the Tamia rattle can. Well, it's just really simple to use and it works really well. Now, of course, I don't like using rattle cans here at my paint booth because there's so much overspray, but with my current mobility problems, setting up a table out in the driveway just isn't really an option. So I'm here at the paint booth and I'm trying to protect myself from the overspray and generally just keeping the overspray down by working in reasonably close and in fairly short bursts here. As always, the key is go very lightly, several light coats instead of any large coats. We don't want to get runs or anything, but primarily we want this to set up quickly and evenly, and the best way to achieve that is to go over it with several light coats, and that helps control the overspray in this particular situation. Now I want to double check and make sure I've covered all of the surfaces that I'm going to be painting. The outer roof sections and outer wall sections are going to be covered over with black construction paper, so there's no point painting those. But all of these interior surfaces all need to have a decent coat of primer. The paint that I'm using is this Plaid. The company is called Plaid, and they make a whole bunch of lines of paint. This one's called Folk Art, but it's just craft paint that you can pick up at the craft stores. There's some of it's even available at Walmart. I've always gravitated toward the more expensive paints, but what I have found is you can use these cheaper craft paints if you're using Vallejo airbrush thinner. By using the Vallejo thinner, I think you could use just about any of these water-based paints and they'd come out well. As always, the key is to put on very light coats, several very light coats. In this case, I want some of the gray primer to show through. Not very much, but a little. It gives a nice weathered appearance right off the bat. And so I'm being very careful to mist this on in very light coats. And I'm just going to put two very light coats on here and then let some of the primer just show through. This first coat is a very light, a sort of medium tan, if you will, a flat finish. And then the next coat is slightly different, a little warmer, a little more toward orange. I'm trying to match the wood color of the floor that I already built out of actual wood, stained wood. So I want to achieve that variegation in color by applying two slightly different colors here with my airbrush, and then dry brushing several different colors over the top of that. Now here you can see the wood grain effect that I did with the saw blade, dragging the saw blade over the plastic. And once you get some color on here, boy, it really brings out that wood grain. It's going to come out even more as we go. But I think that really looks great. Now there's always some little bits and pieces of plastic and dust and so on. So once I get the first coat on here, I lightly sand to get rid of some of this garbage that's been trapped in the paint here. And it really helps with the wood grain effect. Now the second coat, you'll notice, is a slightly different color, a little warmer, a little more orange. And it's just kind of being misted on there with a lot of variegation so that both colors show. I don't want a real even color here. I want to see both of those colors. I set the back wall aside. I want to do this one separately because this is the most visible wall. When you look through the doors, the wall that's right there in front of your nose is the back wall. So I want to pay very close attention to the back wall here and get it looking exactly right. So far, of course, we're only working with the inside, the bare wood inside of the building. The outside of the building is going to be covered over with siding, and the color on the siding will be an incredibly weathered yellow with a lot of wood, weathered wood coming through that. And then the trim on the outside is going to be this Tuscan red. It's kind of a wonderful railroad color. It'll be in better shape than the siding, but all of the exterior trim will be done in this Tuscan red color. As always, light coats with the airbrush. A lot of this color is going to be hand brushed on to get it up under the trim and so on. But the broader surfaces and the flatter trim, this is all going to be airbrushed to get a smoother finish here. I'll only be hand brushing up under the eaves. I assumed I could control my overspray here, and for the most part I can, but I really should have moved my wall sections out of the paint booth. I got a little bit of overspray on those and had to touch that up. Of course, part of the key to success here is getting the right amount of thinner, and it's always a little tricky to figure out exactly what's correct with these craft paints. But I think I was able to nail it pretty good. And now back to the interior wall sections. Again, I had to touch up a little bit where I had overspray on there. But mostly I'm just adding other colors very subtly over the top to create more variegation in the base coat. One of the joys using this water-soluble paint is that I can take the airbrush and all of my bottles and tools into the bathroom and just completely clean those out. They clean up really nice. Well, success. I have my base coat on here, and now I'm ready to go on with dry brushing and a little tiny hint of wash. I'm going to be putting a little wash here over, just very lightly over these interior wood surfaces, because they already look pretty good with the saw blade wood graining on here, and then a couple of different colors of craft paint airbrushed over the top of that. And at this point too, a really close inspection, really getting your nose down in there, do a little light sanding here and there where necessary, but mostly make sure that all of the surfaces that need paint have paint, because if you're going to need to touch that up in the air booth, now is the paint booth rather, now is the time to do that. But everything seems to have paint on it, everything seems to be ready now for weathering and dry brushing and that sort of thing. And that will all be done here at the workbench rather than the paint booth. And boy, if you're anything like me, when you get deep into a project like this, it starts to spread out all over the place and you have a great big huge mess. So since I'm moving on to a whole new phase here, I thought this is an opportunity to clean up all that mess and get the workspace looking good before moving on. And that next phase is putting the tar paper on the outside of the building. Now, I'm using construction paper here, and yes, that's kind of fun to duplicate what they would have done on the prototype building, which is wrap it now in tar paper before putting the siding on for insulation and waterproofing purposes. My bigger concern is I want to keep the light from shining through the gaps in the wall here, because the siding itself is kind of a thin plastic, and the light will pass right through here and right through the outer plastic wall, and well, it'll just look gnarly. So I'm going to use this construction paper slash tar paper, if you will, to help keep the light inside the building, the inside light inside and the outside light outside. There's going to be a couple places on the left side wall where the sidings come slightly loose and it's slightly lifted up. And so you'll actually be able to see the tar paper, if you will, underneath there. So another reason to use something that actually looks like tar paper. I'm securing it in place with Aleene's tacky glue. If you're familiar with that product, boy, it's handy for all kinds of things. It will stick to plastic, and of course it'll stick to paper, and so it's great for this sort of thing. Now it will leave kind of a bubbly surface, you'll notice here, and but that's okay because this is almost entirely underneath the siding, and you'll never know. I'm also able to secure the back wall and the left side wall to the base and the floor at this point. I actually need to because I'm going to be arranging the interior details here. The front wall and the right side wall need to remain loose for the time being so that I can easily access the interior for working in there. And we need to keep in mind that working on your model railroad isn't really working, it's actually screwing around, so setting pieces in place just to see how that's going to look is important. Okay, now for some fun, putting the interior together inside of the building. If you remember, if you've been following along with the project anyway, a few weeks ago we took a radical diversion to make up a bunch of barrels and crates and so on. We get these 3D printed barrels and crates from Charlie over at Little Mountain Timber on eBay and Etsy. And I made up a whole bunch of them while I was painting these up, but I knew that some of them would go inside the building here. A lot of them will go outside of the building. But now we get to start placing some of these tools and artifacts and different things that we got from Charlie inside the building. Then a lot more will go outside. One of the fun things that will be inside here is the Dietz number 2 Blizzard lantern. Charlie 3D prints these out of a clear material, and then you paint in the solid materials. And we've gotten, I don't know, more than a dozen of these from him, and there are going to be several here in the building. And the principal light source for the inside of the building will be one that's lit up. So I'm going to mount this lantern on one of the crates, and then I'm drilling out the crate so that I can fish the wires down through the crate and out through the back wall. I'm going to have several of these lanterns, this one inside and several outside, one of which will also be lit up. If you follow the channel and hopefully are a subscriber, then you know how much I just love the look of these lanterns. Adlake, Dietz, I just love a decent lantern. At any rate, 2 of these will be lit up, and so I need to find some place where I can hide the 2 dropping resistors, the load resistors, to run them. Of course, the star of the show here is the Little Mountain Timber handcar, which I've already constructed. All of this other stuff will be kind of in and around the handcar, but the star of the show is the handcar. I was going to mount one of the lanterns on the handcar, but I want the handcar to be completely removable so that I can place it wherever I want to place it, and that'd be difficult to do with a working lantern. So all of the interior details, the tools and lanterns and everything are permanently mounted. Only the handcar is removable. Now, because the building, the structure is mounted up to the backdrop, it's kind of shortened, and so there's no way to actually pull the handcar completely inside. It'll always be at least partially sticking through the doorway. And so a lot of these interior details take up some of that space where the handcar might park if it were going to go completely inside. Since it isn't going to go completely inside, I'm just going to go ahead and use up some of that space on interior details. So this is about how I'll normally have the handcar parked. Sometimes I might bring it a little more outside. Sometimes I may take it and set it on the track. But for the most part, it'll be just like you see here. I've also put in the construction paper, the tar paper, if you will, on the roof for the same reasons. The outside part of the roof won't really matter that much, but I'm going to do the same treatment with it so that every square inch of the building will be covered over with this tar paper, this construction paper, and then siding and roofing material and everything will mount to that. You can see how having this black paper behind the roof slats and the outside wall sheeting really brings the seams out, and it looks really great. I've reached that fun part on any project where you just can't stop looking at it going, wow, this is turning out great. Well, at any rate, I'm ready now to move on to siding and painting the outside of the structure. And so I'll be picking that up next week. I'm going to be using the vacuum formed siding from Ozark Miniatures. And I've got some tricks up my sleeve to really make this look like it's board by board siding. So I know you're going to want to see that, and you're going to want to follow along as we go forward. So if by chance you're not a subscriber to the channel, please subscribe. And you can do that by clicking on the upcoming blue button. Zoink! Right there, the blue button. Well, we're not sure how you found this video on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring. And Karen and I will see you here on Sunday. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.